Rinpoche continued his teaching this week on the stage of the path shared in common with beings of medium capacity. Rinpoche utilized Lama Tsongkhapa's own outline, which begins with the mental training, and then we find the measure of the determination to be free, and then dispelling misconceptions, and the last category of ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. This will be a very extensive commentary.
What done as a Jibindi, the Tumu larger in Baud, the Madbe, Jibindi, the Tumu larger in Ba. Then,
You charge it. Good so.
Good
so.
Jibindi, the Tumu larger Bata, what done also Page and Nijat, who let the trains from Badua, and the Jibindi, the Tumu. Larger than Malujan, Samba Samba Chibite, Telaludusa, Tabaji, larger Argentina for Jet and Doge. What could the ancient and Wangas to the Raymond to turn Dojan Mara?
So we will continue the teaching under the heading Training the Mind in the Stages of the Path Shared in Common with Persons of Medium Capacity in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So in the English, we're a little bit into the section, so it's on page 267 where we'll begin, and we find Lama Tsongkhapa's beginning outline here under a heading, the major heading of the mental training is where it begins in 267. So we find first category is the identification of the mind intent on liberation. Second category is the measure of the determination to be free. And then third category is dispelling misconceptions. And then fourth category is ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation. So there are four categories in Lama Tsongkhapa's outline that again has the major heading or section heading called Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path Shared with Persons of Medium Capacity. Diksung Rinpoche.
With this one. What that in the Saji non that on with the Taka de Samba Jong was a Tikatu Nandu Samba Jong with the Jirota, Nandu Samba. Chibuchungu Nandu Samba Dang and Yoraba. That Jibundin Katu Leon and no Chami Jirua. Then calling a bunch and you Samba Jong choose Samba Jong went on the J. Tell somebody Chibi said the water and you Samba Julie Chibi said Karisana. In second to Tabat and Lushwana Tissing and Lucia Balas. What this was one thing somebody. Tell her Lutusa was what the that calling about you and I knew somebody near Tugi Nyalede with the Teba Chemi Nyanslav Gumudusa Ajik to what you said it. What the setting said it. That Tabat de larger than about what the Nalata doing it about the good because I'm good at the London in Little Marbe. Argentina was what they said.
Sumba the Nyantu. Nyeba Joan Nyantu Nyanland, the Shanchu Samba Yomare.
Calling about you and you somebody near Tuginale, near Tuginale, the Matu Shanchu Samba, the Nyanzo Gumudu says, go to what you said, what the said he said. They wouldn't do.
Excuse me. So if we look at the outline and explain each of the headings, we find first the category called the mental training. So the mental training is referring to the determination to be free or renunciation, sometimes desire to definitely emerge. That's literal. So When we look at the desire to definitely emerge a renunciation, the renunciation that we find for a being of small capacity is a very coarse form of renunciation, whereas the renunciation that we find in a person of medium capacity is a more subtle form of renunciation. So we can see the difference here between the coarse nature of the small scope and renunciation, or the desire to emerge from the lower realms, and then the more subtle nature of the medium scope or medium capacity renunciation, to emerge completely. So this is what is meant by the mental training. This is the actual training of renunciation. The second category, the measure of the determination to be free, is really what qualifies renunciation. How does one know that the renunciation is truly present? How do you determine that? So when we look at Lama Tsongkhapa's text, the shorter Lamrim, the three principal paths, or sometimes three principal aspects of the path, we find a line that says, by constant meditation, your mind will not entertain a moment's wish even for the successes of this life. So then, here is where the main quote is, and you will aim for freedom all day and night. Then you experience transcendent renunciation. So aiming for freedom day and night, all the time, is what is the measure of if renunciation is present or not. Then you experience transcendent renunciation, actual renunciation. So the next category is dispelling misconceptions. And here, Lama Tsongkhapa presents a doubt that could arise and that others might set forward, a qualm. That states that the practice of renunciation is a practice for, in the desire to emerge from cyclic existence, is a practice of the hearer vehicle and not a practice for the bodhisattva. So this is the misconception that is dispelled in that section, and we'll get into that later. And then the last category, ascertaining the nature of the path leading to liberation, it deals with the two last truths, the truth of cessation and then the truth of path. So those two truths are explained in category number 4. So those are the 4 categories presented in the outline by Lama Tsongkhapa in the text. Dixon.
타바드니 로모즈원도 대지부터 라르치고로 사진인도와 대지부터 다 타바드니 로모즈원하세들 라르치고는 사진이 못요 말와 들은자지비 사진송 지원을 오케이 오늘 왔더니 타방모즈원 타바드니 로모즈원 네 타발을 주도 보고바스 어떤마 가시도 어떤 가송 저디서와 다 담보도 타방모즈원도 말이야 타바드니 로모즈원달라든 담보 타방모즈원 다 타바는 찜바데 타바서게데 와데 찜발레 조아레스 찜발레 조아 레다뇨 무니네 코아 친지이라 데니지 오아게 칸지 오아게 데니지 오아게 칸지 오아게 저월나서들라 데비칸 주칸 주메칸송 ane ndu ngod na ri to kan na ode jine jong de na nge ji la su ba wo den mo ja yu wa re wo de so de sa mar be ta ba je ban jin ba ta nga su kra to lu ma za ba de ta ba de jin do ma ta ba jin ya ju su to lu sa no de na jin nga su de nge ji pong bu ta mendu jin de do ya de le dan yo mo ba ni le dan yo mo be jin de ba res jin za na su do ngal jo ma jin bal jo su na ta ba res ta ba se gen de wo de ta ba je ba ni jin ba le jo de They are later Yomuni, Koa Chiji in Lassa, Nasukara, doing a Pumbutan said down the Ganam, what the later Yomobani is. The Jiwanki, and what the Joaland waters, and the Joaland Satellite de Vicon, Zocon, Zuman Conson. Do you want to Shena, Dundusun, Nandusun too? Lama is had on Jambaina, Ruanga.
Less so.
And then Jenny wants in a nature, Dunju Treche, Gonja, what the nigga, Jija waters. What the song is a marba?
Less so.
What the Calais look ancient to Lund Lashana?
Giant Sheba Ewasum.
Jajiba, what the Tambunga Jermaje, Tabaton Yulung was one the la, and then the Tabaton Yulung was one down. Somebody on the Tabaton Yulung was one down, the Jibitani Roa.
Less so.
Somebody Tabaton Yulung was one the Jermaje Saji Jimadu Marwa.
Less so.
Jajiba the Saji Sun.
Okay, now you're it.
Tabang was one.
Less so.
Tabaton Yulung was one.
The Pamba.
Tabala Junduba Pumbas.
Okay.
They won my tenor soon later.
Touche.
What is that? Tomba to Tabang was one thing.
Touche.
What Jelujana?
Okay. So when we look at the text, when we have the major heading, the mental training, which is the first category of those four in the outline, there are two categories: identifying the mind intent on liberation, and then the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. So the first category, identifying the mind intent on liberation, we find Lama Tsongkhapa just has one section here. And then when we look at Jayan Sheba's outline, we'll find that there are actually three sections that he identifies in this text. So he says that the first section is actual liberation. The second section is the mind seeking it. And then the third section is what is to be abandoned, or what is abandoned in that process. So these are the three categories that Jayan Sheba sets forth in his outline. So the first category is actual liberation. So that is where we begin in the Lamrim Chenmo. So it says identifying the mind intent on liberation. So liberation means freedom from bondage. So just as a translator's note, here this first category of actual liberation, you could put in parentheses like what is actual liberation. So that's what is presented by Tsongkhapa here. So that's what this first category of actual liberation really means. What is actual liberation? So then Lama Tsongkhapa, liberation means freedom from bondage, and what binds you to cyclic existence is karma and the afflictions. Under their power, the aggregates are reborn in a threefold manner in terms of the three realms. They are reborn in the desire realm and so forth. In terms of the kinds of beings, they are reborn as the 5 or 6 kinds of beings. And in terms of the type of birth, they are reborn in 4 ways: by birth from a womb, birth from eggs, birth from heat and moisture, and spontaneous birth. Since this is the nature of bondage, freedom from rebirth impelled by karma and afflictions is liberation, and the desire to obtain that freedom is the mind intent on liberation. I just have the Rinpoche, the Jayan Sheba Sache Tambo, the Kabar Ka. Kabar.
Saji Tambu Waterwa Taba Sheban, the Jimbal Truate, they are led on Yomobanine, Koachi Yila, Teni Onki, and the Kanji Onki, the Holas of Sunta, Drushana, Roanga, True, Jinage Shena, and Jinage Shena, Nela Suba, Je, Pomani, Nisan Joane, Jimmy Wong Yimbe, Telejoan, Taba was autobatre, Domate, Taba was one set.
Then the Lamrim Chenmo got the then they low, neighbor join low. They got the
Taba Deni Lung was one shosana, they would tell him to see Jim Madumua.
Okay.
The Tuba Dobane, Taba Tondunia, near lows.
Okay.
What the nearby the race.
Okay.
What
the Chi. Okay. All right. So where it actually stops is where we find the comma here. So I was asking Rinpoche where Jayan Sheba's section stops because it appeared like we went into the mind in that sentence. So it's actually at that comma. So it says, since this is the nature of bondage, freedom from rebirth impelled by karma and the afflictions is liberation. So that's where the section on actual liberation stops. And then the mind seeking it is no more than this sentence presented here, where it says, and the desire to obtain that freedom is the mind intent on liberation. So that's the next category we'll get into. So I got to go through this. So liberation means freedom from bondage, and what binds you to cyclic existence is karma and the affliction. So here, bondage it literally refers to the karma and afflictions keeping you tied in a way to cyclic existence. So if we had a rope and we kind of hold our clothes together with a rope, for instance, and when we tie that, our clothes are bound to us by this rope. But if we release this rope, then our clothes are unbound. Likewise, we are bound to cyclic existence by our karma and affliction. So it's as if we were tied up by these karma and afflictions and then forced into cyclic existence. Okay, so bound and close. So our karma and afflictions are what keep us stuck here, just as if we are tied up in cyclic existence. And then it says, under their power, the aggregates are reborn in a threefold manner. In terms of the three realms, they are reborn in the desire realm, and so forth. And so forth is referring to the other two of the three realms. So the desire realm is the first realm, the form realm is the second realm, and formless realm is the third realm. So that's what is meant there. In terms of kinds of being, they are reborn as five. So these parentheses are add-ins by the committee. So we find that explanation as a note actually in the commentary. So these parentheses are addition. So they are reborn as 5 or 6 kinds of beings. So if it is 5 kinds of beings, demigods are put in the gods category. If it's 6 kinds of beings, the demigods have their own exclusive category, separate from the gods. So 5 or 6 is referring to those two different ways that you can number cyclic existence, the realms of cyclic existence. And then it says in terms of the type of birth, they are reborn in the 4 ways. Birth from womb, birth from eggs, birth from heat and moisture, and spontaneous birth. So this is the different ways that one is born into cyclic existence. So one is forced by our karma and afflictions into these various types of birth within cyclic existence, and we are bound to that cycle by those karma and afflictions that produce that experience. So since this is the nature of bondage, freedom from rebirth impelled by karma and afflictions is liberation. So this is actual liberation when one is freed from the karma and the afflictions. The karma and afflictions have been unbound as if we are untied from cyclic existence. Khensur Rinpoche.
What do you say? That you know what the Tanya do the Tabatuban development, Tabat don't know what the Tabat Lung was what there is. Siji Madumudua. The Tuban do the Tuban do Tabat don't know.
Okay, Miras.
What take it Tabat Lung but.
So the second category, again, in Jayan Sheva's outline, the mind seeking it, we find just this one sentence in the Lamrim Chenmo. And the desire to obtain that freedom is the mind intent on liberation.
What did you what the that's one but Taba Dunduba Bomba said
Tawa Day on
Taba Dunduba Taba Day on.
Okay.
Lenyu Jindushi ne Shibala Majate Cheba na Tuniba Meduba ne Nyabu Gumba Su Jijin la Medubi Tanji Jang Beba member Ju Jundun Jurosa Taba de Dakar Leda Numuba the Koa to Mataba Mataba in the Keji Gano Marba. 코마다바 예자 계지게 계지 너무도 계지 니비도 가는 니바도 소비도 생각하는 그래 나 가정은 냐마 다른가 하는 들이냐마 손인가 하는 그래 레다 녀모바다 코아도서 그걸 계지 너무도 계지 니바도 가는 그래서 어때 계지 니바 가는 거 매바 찬으로 어떤 질라 타바자줘요 말이스 근데 타바자바 있는 어때 로다리인데 그래서 타바서한테 네 돈이 공부 따지 네 돈이 공부 따지 어 댄지 구유자와 네 구유자와 댄진는 말ပဲ댄진는 소나 댄진은 저분 영물는 그래 네 동엘는 그래서 어 돈이 두셔로 공부 따지 댄진다 네 레다 영모바다 동엔가바 네부 공부 따지 동엔가바들 타발로 그래서 타바자고르마도 계지인가 봐라 타바샤주요 말레스 어때 룬두레는 그래서 어때 송대 인사래 타바때 어때 갈릴루샤는
Then Charan the Bukashe Lasun, then Kasan, then Sani, the Detsi La Yanjer La Rana. Union.
제단은 어떤 뒤지기 자시들어 당아서 로지요로 로질 나와 주니요 말베 로질 나와 주니요로 나와 담부터 나와 니비 주세요 말아 나 담불 샤부 송주요 아래 샤부 담부터 샤부 니비 주세요 많이 봐 송비 주세요 말에 안에 냐마질 찾아봐이나 추전이 사주요로 추전 담부터 니바 주세요 니바 송바 주세요 말아 어떤 그 뒤지 상말로 들어오다 레다 좀 받아 고아도 좀 걸로 계지 담부터 니비 주서 매바데 뒤지 상말 집어로
맞아
어들 타바자나 로바 타바주도 말이스 타방문에 자도 말이스 니아부 공비 따지 네 동행가바들 타바자고 그래스
니에바 공비 또
돈이 드비시라고 되는 말을 그자와 샹수 모던 게면 신드냐바 찾주면스 신드냐바 댄진 신도 찾주는데 최나 대마마로부터 비시라 되게 댄진 찾주 그래스 댄진 너너스 댄진 그러면 요모다 레드 동엘 너네 네 동에다 네 요모 봄비 타봐요 말베 어딜 타봐서 어디 자고 그래스
네 롱가
가정 와서 장사만 샹수 모던 게면 신드냐바 사실 샹바든 진지시험을 써봐도 그걸로 대바 재미에 대치으로 보다 그 댄지 담이 받질면서 당원선 게 많이다 댄지 사줘도 말이스 댄지 사줘게데 추나대만 마루를 시불로 되게 댄지 사줘 그래서 타버드 많이 배시불로 되게 타버드지 줄로 사줘도 와서 타방랑제 많이 배시불로 되게 네 타버드지로 사줘도 된다 그래서 말বে
Then Kaba Kagadu.
되네 어때 바드레 타바데야 레뉴진도 시발로 맞았대 시발로 맞았대
네 탑. 네
제바는 계진이바 맞아바는 예부 공부 수지 진행을 되베 계진가 봐도 어때 예부 공부를 되고 말했어 타지죠 대 어디 타바자바이나 안 타지 타바토바다 깔레메바 세제 타지 타바토바 타는 거랬어 레뉴 코알라서 계진가 봐도 여들어다 타유 주는 주로스 예부 마제나 마오바니 선조아 예 예부 집이 따지 예 선조 루바 오서들 타바드자고 그랬어 어떻게 가더래
the Lamrim Chenmo, the Tarpa, the Yina, the Me Kanga, the Tarpa, the Le Labudu, the Nangla, the Sache Sumba Nangla, the Lamrim Chenmo, the Gari.
사지 송바 타바스게도 어떻게 계지가 벌 작은 말이스 레도 녀모바 계지가 봐 코아 계지가 벌잖아 안 세제 타지게 안 깔레메바 타바투바 타는 그래서 타바투바 조로사 타바투비 전 태유전도 조로스 어때 타바자주요 말스 데나스 주세 디셔 녀부 마지나 마오바 니상 조아 조아 녀부 또비 녀부지 돈이 또 비셔라 공부 따지 니상 조아 로바 코알 조알네 바 로바 카바 어들 타바자 우레스
Leso.
어딘서레
Jo Nyempo JP Do Jininsan de Kanga Somba Nala.
송바레 어디 송바 어디
Joa Lobao.
어디바도 송바레
Okay, 2 channel rooms.
갈레
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that we have the outline and where it stops in the text exactly each time. It's just a lot of texts I'm looking at, so just bear with me here. So the next section, the outline is what is abandoned. So we've shown that one sentence is the mind seeking it, and then what is abandoned. Moment by moment, the compositional activity of karma and the afflictions arises and is destroyed, but this destruction is not liberation. Though things that have been produced do not abide for a second moment, this destruction is not contingent upon conditions for liberation, such as the cultivation of a remedy, knowledge of selflessness. If this were liberation, it would follow that everyone would be liberated without effort, and that is absurd. Consequently, if you fail to cultivate the remedy, you will be reborn in the future, since you will only stop rebirth by cultivating the remedy. Moment by moment, compounded things, compositional activity, all compounded things have a moment. And then as they abide in that moment, as soon as the next moment takes place, that previous moment has been destroyed. It's been abandoned. It's no longer there. So that's the nature of moments. So if we look at some examples, 1 year has 12 months in it. When the first month is over and we're into the second month, the first month is no longer abiding. It's no longer present. We've moved on to the second month. So there's been destruction. The first month has been destroyed. There's been a destruction of that. And if we look then at a month has 4 weeks in it. After the second week, the first week is destroyed. And then a week has 7 days in it. As we get to the second day, the first day is no longer present. So this is compounded things. Compositional activity refers to those compounds that all have this momentary nature. So we could look and then even at minutes. There are 60 minutes within an hour. As those minutes cease, you no longer have the minute before's minute. So there's this destruction that's taking place as things move moment by moment. So that is not what liberation means. So the abandonment of the actual action itself, because the moment has been destroyed where it is taking place, is not freedom from that, is not liberation from that. So when the afflictions arise in the second moment, when the afflictions are no longer there, when we have the afflictions arising and we have their momentary nature, in that second moment when the afflictions are no longer arising, that isn't liberation. That state of being isn't liberation. So it says, though things that have been produced do not abide for a second moment, this destruction is not contingent upon conditions for liberation, such as the cultivation of a remedy. So this destruction that takes place is not freedom from that which has been destroyed. And when we say freedom from, it is freedom from in the sense that it's destroyed, but it's not the freedom that liberation is referring to. And liberation only comes about if a remedy has been presented, if an antidote has been presented. So the antidote that has to be present is a meditation upon emptiness. So through the method of through the practice of meditating upon emptiness, one is able to strike at that which gives rise to cyclic existence. So at the root of cyclic existence, we find the grasping at true establishment. So it is the mind that cognizes that things or phenomena are not truly established that is able to get rid of the grasping at true establishment, by getting rid of the grasping at true establishment, then what it creates is also abandoned. So the karma and the afflictions that arise because of the grasping at true establishment are abandoned. And the karma and afflictions give rise to cyclic existence, give rise to suffering. So if the karma and afflictions are abandoned by abandoning that which causes them, then what is created by those karma and afflictions is also destroyed, suffering and cyclic existence. So this is how one is liberated. Liberation has to be a process where an antidote to that which binds you has been presented. So here it says, consequently, if you fail to cultivate the remedy, you will be reborn in the future, since you only stop rebirth by cultivating the remedy. So you will have a future rebirth in cyclic existence. You will be forced into a future rebirth in cyclic existence if you do not cultivate a remedy, the remedy for it. So what is the remedy for cyclic existence? It's getting rid of the root of cyclic existence. So that's the misconception that grasps at things as being truly established. So when we look at the example of the rope and the snake, so if one were to walk into a dark room and mistake a rope for a snake, the only thing that would get rid of that misconception and everything that comes about by that misconception is the non-mistaken view, which realizes that it is a rope. So by realizing that the rope is a rope, then that negates and abandons the misconception that believes that it is a snake. But if someone were to walk into a room and say, well, it's not an elephant, that wouldn't in any way harm that misconception that believes that it is a snake. The only thing that will harm that misconception that believes that it is a snake is the non-mistaken view that it is a rope. So likewise, the only thing that can harm the mistaken view that grasps at things as being truly established is the non-mistaken view that understands that things are not truly established. So it is that meditation upon selflessness, meditation upon emptiness that serves to get rid of cyclic existence. So this is what, if one cultivates a remedy, then one will stop rebirth. And that's it. So we find in one sutra where it states that one could meditate upon eons, on love, on bodhicitta, or love and compassion, which is an excellent quality of the Mahayana. But even though it is such an excellent quality, it will in no way harm the grasping at true establishment, even if it is meditated upon for eons, because it does not strike at the core, or strike, I don't want to say target, but I think everyone understands. It doesn't strike the right, I'm going to use the word target. So that means that it doesn't serve as an antidote to the grasping at true establishment, even though it is an excellent quality of the Mahayana. You have to apply that which is a direct antidote, a direct remedy, in order to negate it, that mistaken view. So that section number 3 ends right there. Cultivating the remedy, and then we begin with a new section heading, the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. The sache nip lamatson kappa sache nipa the giant sheba ngay injike zuma son then a kale laronang my sarba zugu.
Oh yeah. That no what the tissue what the
Less so, you're right. Yes, less so.
What the large Saji nearby the Sani hit the Jibitos of the Tabatu and the Viluna, Tabatuni, Laws, Lazarwa. The Jibitokaris, Jukaris, Tokarisana, Bana, Kumbi, Dungan Kumbi, Dungan Tunde Kumbi Dungan Shavala Tunde Shua, the Gumbi, Donwala, Mendubi, Nabatonala, Rale Bajinto, Yenaji, Gumbi Dungan, Nyoreshi, Taba, Tondo Junalaya, Dudeji, who Duheji Rajin Jenji, Nemi Tonala Ralebe, Sibi Nemi, Guna Tala, Tondoji, Lumachina, Dungete, Shivala, Tondo Mujunte, Jijabale, Kanla Teju, Yuemi Ba, Tala, Sheju Kala Yu, Ranchin, Lajin, Sibane, Denan Juan, Shawaka, Sheson Bisheros, Watabatule, Tejilegua, Tejile woman, Saji, the Teji Rabon Rabazu. Taba Tunji Luchi, without the Candaris and Apuna, Pujak, to example, Marbe. Nasu tourist, then suffering or suffering. And the Kakum doing us will do euro. Doing Dule, tourist, doing the Chutung, the Marbe. What the Pujak do, Marbe. Nearby, Teji without Pona, won't be doing Shawalas, Kumba. Tourist is a Marbe, Kumbi doing Shawala, Kumbi doing Shawala, Tundun Juan days. Combi Dungan Shawala, Combi Dungan Shonsuna, and what the Kabuyo Marwate, and Combi Dungan Meba, and Chutuan Jil Kabuyo, da Tondo Shawate, Combi Donga la Mandubis, ne Torseti Dungan la Mandubi, Dungan Tonguas, Mandubi, Nabatomala Rale Bajintos. Rale Bajinto, what the example. Then Nilanji Pom Dungan show you Dungan Yorashi Taba, Tondo Saji Niwalan Pombo, and Nyorashi Taba, Tondo Juma Layan, Tondo Juma Layan, Tondo Singajon Sambarwa, Tondo Juma Yang, Nilanji Pombu, Dungan Rajin Janji, Nyami Tonala Rale Base. Dogen Niemi, Niemi Santan, Niemi Tonsuna, and Dogen Shi Taba to a Gabiung race. Niemi Tonala Ralebe, Sibi Niemi Gune, Tela Tundu Jilu Majinas, Kui Niemi Gune, Tel Taba Lut Majina, Dogen Shiwala, Tundu Mujuntes, Dogen Shiwa, Kui Dogen Shiwa. And could the Pompe Taba, Tondo Yomares, Junte, Jejabon John Jejaba. Can't let you hear me, but don't let you are meba, Nanu Samba Yemeba, Tella, Shigul Kalayus, Tabat and Yulu Gabukani Yomares, Shigul Kalayu, Rajin Lajin Sibande, Dene, Juma, Shawakas. Susu Seba de Susu Chinam is soundly or as a quality. Seba de Susu Desa Kambanam. What did you and San Louis and Hotel and Nabanjua the Shirakali Cabres Rachin Lajin Seba ne Dene Juan Shawakas calling Nabanju and somebody Chick Cabres, Shesum Shiros.
In Rinpoche, the giant Sheba. The Nipa, Dene Tarpa, Dunyer, JP Talani, Duyan Dang Gonjungi, there.
John Jibi was Del Saji Luka Yomare, okay, Jirmishiro,
okay.
John Jibi Tabang Mosuma, Tabatun Lumosuma, Taba Junduba Pumbasum Marbe, Junduba Sumba Pumbatrua,
Lesser.
Tanda the Niba said to the Larich of the Ni Legua, they would the Niba Legua, the Catul Niba Legua, Niba the Tabatun Luchi Tap. Niba to what the
Ale Ni, the Dunya Dang Gonju, the Nipa, the Denda Yalanji. Okay.
Woman Legua,
Okay, Tuche. So now this next section, the method for developing the mind intent on liberation, Jayan Sheba's commentary is the same points that we find in the Lamrim Chenmo. So further down than we're going to read, you find the two categories that Lama Tsongkhapa presents: the reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of, reflection on suffering and its origin, and then reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 dependent arisings. So these are the two categories, and Jayan Sheba has a similar outline that goes forward the way Lama Tsongkhapa's will. So the method for developing the mind intent on liberation: the desire to relieve the suffering of thirst is based on seeing that you do not want to be tormented by thirst. Likewise, the desire to attain liberation, which relieves the suffering of the aggregates appropriated by karma and the afflictions, is based upon seeing that the appropriated aggregates are flawed insofar as they have suffering as their nature. Unless you develop a determination to reject cyclic existence through meditating on its faults, you will not seek relief from the suffering of the appropriated aggregates. The 400 stanzas is quoted by Aryadeva. How can one who is not disenchanted with this world appreciate peace? Cyclic existence, like home, is difficult to leave behind. So in the beginning here, it compares the desire to relieve the suffering of thirst to the desire to attain liberation. So if you have if you're thirsty, then a suffering is created. It's a discomfort that's created. So you want to get rid of that suffering. So you would like a drink of water, because if you could get a drink of water, that would allow you to end that suffering of thirst. So you really desire that ending, and a drink of water, is something that you want. And so, likewise, the desire to attain liberation, which relieves the suffering of the aggregates appropriated by karma and the afflictions, is based upon seeing that the appropriated aggregates are flawed insofar as they have suffering as their nature. Developing the desire to definitely emerge comes about by seeing the flaws of cyclic existence and seeing that the aggregates, the heaps that we are forced into are suffering. So they are because they are appropriated or forced on us by our karma and afflictions. So therefore, because of this, they are suffering. So this is something that we have to recognize in order to want to be free from cyclic existence. So we recognize when we're thirsty and we want to be free from that. We have to recognize in that same kind of way that we would recognize we were thirsty, that cyclic existence is flawed and that it has downfalls. And then we'll want to be free kind of in that same way. So here, 400 stanzas speaks of how can one who is not disenchanted with this world appreciate peace. Cyclic existence like home is difficult to leave behind. So how could one wish for liberation if one actually likes cyclic existence? So if one sees cyclic existence as home, then it will become a place of comfort, and it won't feel like somewhere you want to leave. It will be difficult to want to leave it. So you have to recognize its negativities, its drawbacks, in order to not have that kind of sentimental feeling about it, or that, I guess that's the best way to translate it, that sentimental feeling about it, or that feeling of... the feeling, it's almost a word that's like an emotion, but this feeling of home, this comfort level you have, this feeling of home. So it's difficult to leave that behind. So you have to recognize why it is something to be abandoned in order to become disenchanted with it. Without knowing these facts, and without knowing the nature of cyclic existence, and knowing the nature of these suffering aggregates that have been brought on by karma and afflictions, we won't be able to have the determination to be free. So that's the first category in both texts.
다 나리 집에 사지 그런 나리 사지 여러
Less so.
사지 나로로데 나리 집에 네바세진도 어디 사지 나로도
Yure. NGK Yure.
아무 타바되는 줄로 뭐송한테 대집이 터서 싫어와 타바되는 줄로 뭐송한테 대집이 터서 다 타바되는 줄로 뭐송한테라 동안도 근육은 상바다 연락 중요한 상바스
Less so.
만도도와 나리 집은 놀러 대집부터 니버 대집부터 사진 놀러도와
Less so.
사진 놀러도와 나리 집은 그런 놀래 니버서도 카니 되고도와
Less so.
어때 마드도 어떻게 되나 나리 집 사진 그런 어때 타방 뭐좀 대집이 탑 되는 담불라 동안도 근육은 상바다 연락 중요한 상바다는
Less so.
사질 나리 집은 놀러 니버서 카니 레겐다도와 어때 도와진도 왔어
The next section, so the first section is the method for developing the mind intent on liberation. And then we find Lama Tsongkhapa's presentation of an outline. So it says, developing the mind intent on liberation has two parts: reflection on suffering and its origin, and the reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination, or the 12 dependent arisings. These are the two categories that are presented.
What did you taten? Tena, Tabatani, Logibi Tola Niso, the Munich in the neighbor the Leguan, Yamarba, Neighbor Tabongozuma, the Jibi Tab, Tabongozuma Saji, the Jibi Thousand, what the Katu Leguan Ramjua, Larichibutan or neighbor Jindu, the Saji Nolomdua.
We first have the identification of the mind intent on liberation, and then we have this actual liberation, the actual meaning of liberation presented, and then we have the method for developing that mind intent on liberation. Underneath the category of the method for its arisal, we don't find any broken down categories that are different than are presented here in the Great Treatise.
What the Chibin Katul, what the two, what the Nimarba? Don't the Kunugunas Nanju Samba Taji, Italian and La Junior Santana, Nanju Samba Jibi Tau, Samba Nides, Ta Tambula Ni, don't the Kunugun Samba de la, do the Kui Yemi Samba Dan. Kunyu kuyu jorin samba os do de kuyu nyemi kunyu kuyu jorin what sajini digdoa
Lessa
ta tombo do de kuyu nyemi samba dela tombo la ni do de denji thomason bu goba temba dans temba ta donga goba mu sajini digdoa sajini ane dode kuyi yemi sambatla ane dode denji thoma tembi goba temba das ta dogen da ba kunu da ba goden lande
Lesso Tamunibu
ane ode ngodu je jena atana ngodu je ngodele ko tambele judan la da dogen da judan la da dogen da sondule dembaje dengo dembaje Judan London Mare Judan Deban Natans Judan Deban Judan Debani Chuchu the Marbe Judan Chuchu Deban Natans ship Honaba Chu Deban Natans ship because so Demaji Dengor Demaji Jimbat Kande Deman Tom doing Demba Tenukunu Demba Muden Lande Jimbat what they call Domboke Rudan Deba Nadan Shibikoso, Tom doing Demba, Niba Gunu Demba, Sumba Guden, jiba lande what they was magil ko jiba ge ko jiba na lo judan la da dunga da gobala no corrigis ko jiba ko so judan la da juson du ne judan la da dunga das judan jukunju demba la denji kunju demba tambache la den niba che judan la da dunga da ba somba che goden jiba le jang jiba
Lesso.
kunju demba na la den an dunga demba goden de ko jiba ko sula ne kunju demba dunga ju yin du tambache judan dunga niba yin san ni jamre ta niba ane la den to wa den goden ju marbe goden to ju yin san ane somba de karsa la den che ane goden ko jiba ko so debaji tembe kurin ta ta ko tombe ko so debaji tembe kurin ni jamu do
Garshine.
wadan jamu ko jibi ko so debaji tembe jundi denji ri mo de sheba yis jundi denji remba judan so de kunu demba ne la da sheba ko so la den te goden tu ju marbe juni de ngal so debu de
Oh,
ne
I see.
ne goden ni de somba de sheba ja
Don't get me a Rinpoche. So, what am I going to do first here? So we'll just start with the Lamrim Chenmo, page 268. Reflection on suffering and its origin developing the mind intent on liberation has two parts. Reflection on suffering and its origin, and then reflection from the viewpoint of 12 dependent arisings. So here we have this actual method presented for developing this mind intent on liberation. So Rinpoche before said it's curious that we don't have this word actual presented as an outline feature, the actual way to develop method for developing it under here, reflection on suffering and its origin, and reflection on the 12 links of dependent origination. So that first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, there are two categories, reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and then reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin. And then reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, we find that there are two parts. It is explained in terms of two parts, showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering as the first of the Four Noble Truths. Okay, we're just going to stop here. I hopefully won't forget all of that, but we'll stop here. Okay, so when we look at the outline in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find the developing the mind intent on liberation has two parts: reflection on suffering and its origin, reflection from the viewpoint of the 12 links of dependent origination, or the 12 dependent arisings. The first category, reflection on suffering and its origin, has two categories: reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, and reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of its origin. So the first category, reflection on the truth of suffering, the faults of cyclic existence, has two categories, showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering as the first of the four truths, and then the actual meditation on suffering. And when we look at it in these categories, we see the reflection on the truth of suffering, and the second category, reflection on the process of cyclic existence in terms of origin, to be the first of the two noble truths. So when we look at the Four Noble Truths and we look at how they're presented, we could see their presentation done by how one actually practices them, and then a presentation that's given that shows the cause and effect relationship that they have with one another. So when we look at Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, we'll see that the first chapter establishes the Four Noble Truths in terms of how one practices them. And it says, there's very small words when we look at the actual root text. It says, Drut Dandemba. It says, achieving the truths, the three jewels, Buddha, and so forth. So achieving here could be translated as established. And that's referring to the two truths, and then the truths is referring to the Four Noble Truths. And this section shows how one would practice these Four Noble Truths, and it's in the order that is being presented here. So this first category, showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering, has the first of the Four Noble Truths. One recognizes the truth of suffering, and then wants to know what the origin is, and then realizes that it can end, that there is a cessation, and then this is how. This is the pathway to its cessation. So this is kind of the stages, the mental stages that take place related to the Four Noble Truths. So that's the presentation in that first chapter of the Abhisama Alamkara. The other is by way of cause and effect. So then, if it's done that way, it's first presented with the truth of origin, and then presented with the truth of path, and then presented with the truth of suffering, and then presented, then the truth of cessation is presented. So this is by way of cause and effect. So we have cause and path. So cause in the text, in the Abhisama Alamkara. So in the Abhisama Alamkara in chapter 4, it says cause, path, suffering, cessation. So cause here is referring to the origin of suffering. And path is referring to the pathway which leads to cessation. And then, of course, suffering and cessation. So the origin of suffering is what causes suffering. And path is what produces cessation. So you have first those two causes up top, and then you have the two results on the bottom. And that's this another way that you could present the Four Noble Truths, by showing the truths that are the causes, or that which produces, and then those truths which are the results of, or produced from those. So these are the two ways, the differences in presentation from chapter 1 of the Abhisama Alamkara to chapter 4. But this section is dealing with it as asserting the truth of suffering is the first of the Four Noble Truths. So it's that first way that the Abhisama Alamkara presents it. I have to produce. Okay.
Tambulani dune kuyi yeme sambatla dune denji thomasun bi gobatamba tan dune gongoni je ta tambu dune damba jege thomasun go jusen kare tambu ne denji to thomasun dune damba thomasun jimundos kunjun jotan doden ti debros kunjun deba jotan dune damba debros jud khel duros debut show duros kunjun khel du
show
duros lesson so kunjun deba khel te anna dogen show den duros lesson ko jibat den double marba ne kunjun jotan doden jebe yembe kunjun khala sa kunjun deba khel res hala doden showa yenas Kishes Karjene and the Jonden de Jorim, but the Tadam Tuber, Grumutan, Dunga Papi Dembo, Then Kunyu Papi Tembo, Songa Jusankaris, She Son She Nas, what they Chobat Ko Marbe,
Lessa.
or that in the Lamarbe, Tela Tumbe, Jundeji, Zimbale do this. Jundeji not the Kunyu de Bankere, Dungan Sugures, Jundeji Rimba Tele do the, and the Jebut Dungan de Batangel there, and the Jukunu de Bashooting or do the Sumbala, Nyanle Jine Chebu or Chembu Bijumetos, Nyanle Jine Chebu or La Jula Chizembi, Naga Chebu orders, Jula Tata Jeta Mondurings, what to Gaji, Pajin Chidun.
Lessa.
Ne Chembu Bijumetos, Dungan Thomason, Kunyabason at the La Jula Chiage, Naga Chebu orders.
Lessa.
They use also the Rankelson, Kunju Temple, Juyu Maris, you have a Jumeto. Tea Jeta in Shena, Tea Jeta in Shena, what there? That land do temper, do temper the Jibani, but Tea Kanshin and Data. Duja Rani, Toma Koale, Tandu Shinji Maluba, Majinas, Duja Rani, Toma Koale Tandu, Ganu Samba, Shinji Maluba, the Majina. Tabi Zawa Chedres, Tabi Zawa Yomaris, Tabi Zawa Chebe, and then the Tabal Candes Siguris, Titu Maris, Tabi Zawa Chebe, the Taba Jetatis, Tenas, Toma, Duja Mariba, Duja Maribe Dine, Ku Pansu Dungawala. The ones about Shinjuluki, Lubalasa, and the Duja to Zokangalo, the Kui Pansu Dunkan, and what the way in Santandu was, what there is.
Lessa.
Shinjuluki, Lulasa. Jijabale, what the Conti Jirota, Dunga Jasun de la Tar. Naba going to Yemena and Shechu, then Shimala, Jiba Jene, Jibenjuro, Sheson Bata Rosa, Sheson Bata, what the Jabaleson, Somba Najeres, Dunga Jasun de la Ta, Dunga Jasun de la Ta, and the Naba going to Yemena, Dunga Jasun de la Ta Naba going to Yemena. That the next Taku, Tomita, Tamita Nimarbe, Tomita Yomare, Tamita Yolo Marbe, or the Ajat to Sule. Dunga Jasun de la Ta, Nabakun to Yomenas, Shechun Dene, Shimala, Koal Toma Tamaba Dalai, and the Koal Shima, Koal Jivala, and the Karajin Shigumadus. Jiba Jene, Jimenjuros, Sheson Bataras, Dene, Yantabana, the Wamages, Yantabana, the Wamages, Dungelos, later Yomo Waki or Pombo to Zukalo, Dungan what it was, and what the what did you, Maris Marba, Dungelosa. Matanya be tension on Joash doing is Kazunga G. Layimba, Tadan de Leda. Then they are Tabana, Dawa Maiji, Dugan Losa. Kui Pansu to Zukalo. The one that you tungu, the one when the water woman do him what is the new Joan in Beijing. Tanga doing debited Mata doing two damage Marba. Mata doing two damage. Demaji the Nabaji Euro. The debited Mata doing two damage. Sajin Yaman and Bombuchu, Mataba in the Ringachi. Sajin Yaman and Bombuchu. Doing how I eat the language you want in Beijing. Sajin Yaman and Bombuchu, don't want eat the song that to age 2 years. Sajin Yaman and Bombuchu, that member eat wrong with dog woman to Beijing. What the Washington Tajiko, the je don't delay that. Don't have any television watching base what the Tataro.
Less so.
Matanya Vitension and Joanne doing is passing what the coach.
Then Mita Yende. Mitaba Yende.
Mataba in the Rengachi is a cock.
Okay, Ngai Kanga Yere.
Yeah.
Ngay Kerson. Shiton Ngay Kerson.
What do you
NGK, Nama Gason. Ngay Kerson. Okay. So here, next, showing the significance of the Buddha's asserting the truth of suffering as the first of the four truths. So here we have a qualm. The true origins are the causes, and truth sufferings are their effects. Why then did the Bhagavan reverse that order? If the origins precede sufferings and say, monks, this is the noble truth of suffering, this is the noble truth of origin. So then the reply is, in this case, the teacher reversed the sequence of cause and effect not out of error, but because this reversal is vital for practice. So this is the stages of practice. This is how one develops a desire to emerge and then engages in a process that will allow him or her to emerge. So why? If his disciples failed to develop a proper determination to liberate themselves from cyclic existence, first they would sever the very root of liberation. How then could he lead them to liberation? Thus, in the beginning, the darkness of ignorance enshrouded his students. They mistook the wonders of cyclic existence, which are in fact suffering, for happiness. So one recognizes that the happiness within cyclic existence is suffering. It's suffering because it is brought on by karma and afflictions. Because the cyclic existence is brought on by karma and afflictions, and then experience of cyclic existence is brought on by karma and afflictions, it is necessarily suffering. So, and then we have a quote from Arya Deva's 400 verses. The Rinpoche, the Lamrim Chenmo, the Tuan, Tama, the Yanjur Detsuruna, the Nanzu Maripa, the Toma Maripa, the Gar, the Ngama, the Japa Ngama, the Lamitsum Kappa, the Kalen, then I gotta find it in the text. I have like so many texts here. Dead School Rinpoche. Tambo. Chishinange Ratu Mare. The Dombe Juje. I'm sorry, just bear with me here. I want to make sure. The Ngama, the Rinpoche, the Tuma Meba, the Tama, the Charan, the Dits Geshe Lharampa.
Tanden what the Jijabale the Tendua, the Jasun de la Ta, Nabakun to Yuminas, don't quit doing the Jasutele, Ta Nabakun to Yumares.
Ale.
Tames the Kui, Tomi Tames, Shibitore, Tami Tames Shibitores, the Sanjitan Wudua. Kui doing Jasun de la Tara Nabakun to Yubamai, Sumba de, Ne Kual Tomita Yumare, Sungure, Tomita Yumare Sungures, Yumina, and things on the Sheba, then she call Shimbala, Nandiba Karjin Chebus.
Lessa.
No call to my Takan de Tony Maguna call Tamita Yumaruta. Tony Gomatuna,
Lessa.
Call Tatua Yumaru, young call Kudu.
Rinpoche, Dingik Triwa, the Dene, Tomar Duja Maripi, Mumpe, Jene, Dingik Triwa, Dene Tomar Dulja Marip.
Then a Toma Duja Maribi maybe Dines, and the Duja to the Galo. Legudilla Mariba, the Tokonanilla Mariba movie or what is Mabak Dine,
Lasso,
Kui Panso, and a Kui Panso led and Yama Kui Panso, and a Kui the Water to Galo, ane dewanzin du gores dunga tungu mares dewanzin du gores ku phansu dunga la dewanzin ba shinji logi hlubes ku phansu de dunga mares dunga yimbala ane dunga ma yimba dewanzin du gores lenyu ji jwa je ma yimba zin du gores dewanzin be ku lot le la sa
Okay.
Hebala jejabales ko ja sun de la ta na ba kun du yeme na xie chuan de de xin ba la ji ba ji na ji men ju ro xie song ba tar tan de san de da do de ko ta se de du ni ma gu na ko ta mi ta yong ma ro da
Lesson.
돈이 마고는 가두이네 야시 야지발에 야시 야지발에 좋아요 뭐 타요 말다 어디 돈이 고마도 봐 있나 어디 콜 담이 타주는 요아요 말레스 어디 좀 시금이 됐다 어디 타 좋아하게 제도 라고가 된지 산고 뭐 됐어 자순들라 나바군도 예매나 시춘되는 신화라 니바제는 제면 주로 시송 받던데 양 답아나 도와 많이 제스 그 번수 양 답은 도와 말스 동해로스 동해 전나바 토마스네 조아지 그베 동해 소그베 동해 제 담바 토마송소 어디 동해 님의 몸소는 동해 담바 조다 제발 타유 ane ngaju sabat ji ong gore te so da jusen ti jusen je ane donge de ba denji thomas ong ba res jusen de res
Okay. So I'm going to go back up to here. So my question to Rinpoche was about, so I'm just going to go through it and explain the commentary as we go. True origins are the causes and true sufferings are their effects. Why then did the Bhagavan reverse that order? If the origins precede sufferings and say, monks, this is the noble truth of suffering. This is the noble truth of origin. So the question is, why wasn't the cause put and then the effect put? Why was it put into that order? So the reply is that it was put into that order because this is how one would practice it. This is how one would realize these four truths and apply them to his or her practice. So a reply, in this case, the teacher reversed the sequence of cause and effect not out of error, but because this reversal is vital for practice. Why? If his disciples failed to develop a proper determination to liberate themselves from cyclic existence first, they would never sever the very root of liberation. So if one didn't recognize the drawbacks of cyclic existence, didn't realize that cyclic existence is necessarily suffering because it is brought about by karma and afflictions, if one does not realize this, then there won't be any determination to be free, so one won't look any further. There won't be any reason or purpose for practicing or looking forward or looking to what the origin of it is if one doesn't understand what the truth of suffering, parentheses, is referring to. So this is why one needs to analyze and investigate the downfalls of cyclic existence in order to develop this mental state that wishes to definitely emerge. So why, if his disciples failed to develop a proper determination to liberate themselves from cyclic existence first, they would sever the very root of liberation. So one cannot be liberated without this desire to emerge. So without it, there is no liberation. And then it says, how then could he lead them to liberation? Thus, in the beginning, the darkness of ignorance enshrouded his students. So we have various forms of ignorance. We have the ignorance of reality, and then this ignorance of the ignorance of reality, and then ignorance of karma and its results. So when we see this darkness of ignorance, we could be talking about either of those two categories. But specifically, here it's speaking of this ignorance that sees the wonders of cyclic existence. This word wonder is the one we translate as excellence sometimes, the excellent things of cyclic existence. This ignorance sees those excellent things of cyclic existence as happiness and does not see them as the actual truth of suffering. So there is a mistake in terms of what these things actually are. So it says, which are in fact suffering for happiness. So they mistook the wonders of cyclic existence, the excellent things of cyclic existence, which are in fact suffering for happiness. So it's necessary to see the downfalls of these wonders of cyclic existence, and see the suffering and understand it in order to reverse that idea that sees it as happiness, and this misconception that sees it as happiness. Then Aryadeva's 400 verses says, "Fool, if there is no end whatsoever to the ocean of suffering, why are you who are caught up in it not afraid?" So when we look at these two words, beginning and end, we state that there is no beginning to cyclic existence, so we can't find a first. So we posit beginninglessness, but we state that there is an end to cyclic existence. This "there is no end whatsoever" is referring to if one does not have the wisdom realizing emptiness. If one does not get rid of the root of cyclic existence, then the Rinpoche, the Aryadeva, the Jib Japi, the lay, the Doni Dopi Shera Mena, then okay. So if you don't have the wisdom realizing emptiness, then there is no possible end to cyclic existence. So if this isn't there, then why aren't you afraid? So that's what the 400 verses is saying. If you don't have this wisdom realizing emptiness, then you necessarily can't end cyclic existence. And if that is your present state, why are you who are caught up in it, so caught up in this misconception, not afraid? Caught up in this misconception, meaning misapprehending reality. And by misapprehending reality, it's not possible to be free from cyclic existence. There's no end to it. So why aren't you scared of this? So then by saying, in fact, this cyclic existence is not happiness but suffering, the Buddha explained many forms of suffering and led his disciples to become disenchanted with cyclic existence and realize it as suffering. As this is a necessary precondition, the Buddha first spoke about the truth of suffering. So when we look at the Four Noble Truths, each of the Four Noble Truths have 4 different aspects, making for 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths. So the first Noble Truth, the truth of suffering, has 4 attributes. So the first attribute is that it is impermanent. The second attribute is that it is suffering. And then the third attribute is selflessness, and then the fourth attribute is emptiness or empty. So here we say it is impermanent because it is being produced occasionally. So it is momentarily being produced, occasionally being produced. Then the Yapulana Dungyal Demba, the Mitapa Yinde, the Yabula. Okay. So we would say when we look at these 4 attributes, we would say that truth sufferings are impermanent because of being produced occasionally. So this word "occasionally" means momentarily in this case. True sufferings are suffering or miserable because they are under the influence of contaminated actions and afflictions. So they are necessarily suffering because of being under the influence of this. Selfless because of not existing as an independent self, influenced by impermanent factors. So there's not You can also say because of it not being established as an independent self or existing as an independent self. And then the last category, empty, because it is empty of a pure self that is different, that is other. That word different is, we have singular and different or one and other in the debate terminology. So this is other or different. So because it is empty of a pure self that is other or different. This is how we define how we explain why each of this is how we explain why the true sufferings has 4 attributes and why it has each of those attributes. So these definitions, I'm sorry, it's a little choppy, but these definitions come from Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. So this is Losaling textbook writer, and this is from the text as the translators note that the monks study when they study Prajnaparamita. So this has been translated from that, and we'll go through the other 12 points that are made in the future. These are the first 4 attributes of the first noble truth. The 4 attributes of the first noble truth, and if you do not become disenchanted with cyclic existence, if you do not see the downfalls of cyclic existence, then it's not possible to move forward. It's not possible to do anything else. So this is why the Buddha first presented the truth of suffering, so that there would be a motivation or a reason to move to the next steps and points. So this is again the presentation by way of how one would actually practice it. I think Nge Saba Kangalasan.
Doa Kandijina, Dungel Gabu, Dawal Gabu, Dungel Gabu Mare, and then Dungel Mabazugundus, Salu Kugres, and then Dungel was the Jud Makana, and then Dungel Katu Mare, Dungel Jukarina Nave, Salu the Legres, then the Kunu Lay or Nibal Lay Waters, and then Dungel Gabume, Dungel Pongudu, Dungel Mabazugundu, Hina Dungel Mabazubala, Dungel Jumaba Mazuna. And doing Mabazu Mare, doing good Karina Nabe, Salu Kogres, and the Kunu Niba Leoris, what Letesiana.
So then one recognizes that he or she does not like the truth of suffering, does not like suffering. One recognizes that he or she likes to have happiness, and then wishes to abandon all forms of suffering in order to achieve that desired goal of happiness. But in order to abandon suffering, it's necessary to abandon the cause of suffering. So the practitioner first recognizes that he or she doesn't like suffering, enjoys happiness, wants to have happiness, and so wants to then get rid of suffering because of this desire for happiness. And without getting rid of the cause of suffering, it's not possible to get rid of suffering. So then the practitioner recognizes the need to get rid of the cause of suffering, and then we arrive at the next truth, the truth of origin. So this is by the way of practice again. The practitioner recognizes the truth of suffering, that he or she becomes disenchanted with it, does not like suffering, wishes to have happiness, wishes to eradicate suffering, recognizes in order to eradicate suffering, its cause must be eradicated, and then the explanation of origin is presented.
Jawashambi what the Julamale, Nen Shija, Neji Juna Mojala, then Tuja, Pen and Tempashawater, Dunga Jutan, Tunguba, Tejila, Sheja, Ponja Ribasha Tempachis, Dunga Deva Nendamoris, Nasa Sapari Marban, Nendamoris, and the Guru Deva Nag Junamoris, and what the Landen Mendamoris, Muden the Netabu, the one Damoris. Lande the Mendamoris Marva, Nene Sheja, Neju, Nasan Jonzuna, Nasal Gabu Marwa, Gabu Medu, Nasaka Judicari, Tadakazan, Taji Jene, Taji Dam Marva, Nene Sheja, Nejun Ponjala, didn't Tujas, Nasa maybe the what Tujar with Angudin. Pen the Tebashawa de Lande, Pen de Lande, Bongures, what the Takoraja did it.
So we find an analogy made in Maitreya's sublime continuum, where the truth of suffering is compared to an illness, and the truth of origin is compared to the cause of the illness, and the truth of cessation is compared to being free from the illness, and then the truth of path is compared to the medication that one must take in order to be free from that illness. So usually I can find this rather quickly. So it says, recognize you are ill.
Page 270.
Thank you. That's going to help. So recognize that you are ill. Eliminate, I have it tabbed off too, which recognize that you are ill, eliminate the cause of the illness, attain health, rely on a remedy. Likewise, you should recognize, eliminate, attain, and rely upon suffering, its cause, its cessation, the path, respectively. So here, recognize that you are ill is compared to the, as stated before, the truth of suffering. Eliminate the cause of the illness is compared to the truth of origin of suffering. Attaining health is compared to the truth of cessation of suffering. And relying on a remedy is compared to the truth of path. So one has to recognize or understand the truth of suffering, abandon the cause of suffering, achieve the state of cessation by relying upon a path. So this is what is meant here. So the path is compared to the medicine that you would take in order to, the remedy that you rely upon. The medicine that you would take in order to be free. So Maitreya compares the Four Noble Truths to the progression of an illness from the illness to cured, and the progression of suffering from suffering that is present to suffering that has ceased or been abandoned. So this is from the Sublime Continuum. And again, I'm just going to read it. Recognize that you are ill, eliminate the cause of the illness, attain health, rely on a remedy. Likewise, you should recognize, eliminate, attain, and rely upon suffering, its cause, its cessation, and the path, respectively.
Nansal Gabamedu, and what the Nasate, Mabazubala, what the Judmaduna, ne Kato Marota, Nasak Jukari, Masaji Marbe, Kunjung Sunato Marbe, and then what the Nasa Mabel Dawal Gabayuro, and go there. Nasa maybe Dawad Yuala, what the Nasa Nemhensagina, and Nasa Tanurota. Tedan Dai Landen Gungina, Neku Dungan Tai, Tabayungres, what the example of the Bujan and Kuzo Nganjir.
So this example, so we use this example to understand the presentation of the Four Noble Truths. So if one has tuberculosis or cancer or diabetes, he or she does not like that. Then this would be compared to the truth of suffering. Because he or she does not like or want to have cancer, diabetes, or tuberculosis, they want to figure out how to get rid of it. In order to get rid of it, it's necessary to get rid of what causes it, what its origin is. If its origin isn't abandoned, if what causes it isn't abandoned, then it can't be abandoned because there'll be an arisal. So in order to get rid of the subject here, the suffering, it's necessary to get rid of its cause, its origin. So likewise, if you want to get rid of an illness, it's necessary to get rid of what causes the illness. So then in order to get rid of that illness, it's necessary to engage in some kind of protocol or procedure that will allow one to get rid of it. And here the example is made to medicine. So medicine that you're told to take. So if you take this medicine, then you're able to be free from that illness. So this medicine the path is compared to medicine. If one meditates upon the path, engages in the path, then one will be able to be freed from suffering, freed from cyclic existence, in the same way that by recognizing an illness and having a dislike for it and wanting to get rid of the origin, and taking medicine that gets rid of the origin allows one to attain health. By recognizing the truth of suffering and then wishing to abandon its origin and then getting rid of the origin by way of a path, one can achieve a state of cessation, which is a freedom from cyclic existence altogether. So that's how you would compare those two points, those two subjects, the subject of the Four Noble Truths and the eradication of an illness.
So it's
very important, even though we've done this before, for us to go over these things again and again. Less so. Less so.
Nasa maybe the what tabanda. What the landed or the hand of what is Marbe? Pensano what the Pujane, what the Pumajano to go cabin.
Less so. So sometimes without examples like these, truly understanding subjects can be difficult. But by looking at this example Lord Maitreya has presented, it's easy to understand what is meant. So recognize that you're ill. This is compared to the superior truth of suffering. Eliminate the cause of the illness. This is example is compared to the origin of suffering. Attain health is compared to the cessation of suffering. And rely upon a remedy is compared to the pathway. The truth of path. This remedy or this medication, in the case of a spiritual goal, is the pathway which leads to complete cessation. So this is how Lord Maitreya has presented it, so we can understand it better. Decent.
What the Josh and be what the Debaji and then the Deba Nasa number, Kunu Deba Nasa number, and then go then to what the Nashi the one number, and then Laden hand numbers, what this one will do with the got number Deba not answered, what the Josh and be team, but
so then we can take these different texts and put them together now, so we can see what's presented here. By Lord Maitreya and the Sublime Continuum, and then we can look at Lord Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, where it says established truths, and then we find the order presented of the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, the truth of cessation, and the truth of path. And then in the Sublime Continuum we find that same order presented, where it states recognize that you are ill, the truth of suffering, eliminate the cause of the illness, the truth of origin, attain health, the truth of cessation, and rely on a remedy, the truth of path. So we can compare these texts and we see the same order presented for the reason stated before. Okay. So that'll be the end of class today. And so we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. What would you call this class today? Information. Today Rinpoche gave us information. Tu Chenrezig Rinpoche, Sheda Selbudu, Matsu Sheda Pentodu, Matsu Kanga, the Chuli Getru Kanga, the Kepa Chagare. So we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Lobsang Drakpa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Yatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Rinpoche, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche, Guzi Shabi Denro Nang, Lamrim